Hello, so this is going to cover how to do rule-based sentiment analysis. This comes from the AI Rookies Labs Beginning NLP with Orange book. And there's two methods of doing sentiment analysis, one of which is rule-based, the other of which is machine learning-based. Possible there's more than two, but those are the two that I know. These are really sort of basic things now. When I first taught this like 6 or 7 years ago, I did it in R in an Intro to Data Analytics course, and I wasn't quite sure what the heck it was used for then. But now I am. This is used, it's really common. I mean, honestly, this almost should be taught in high school now. Looking at like basic text, for example, like a consumer review on a shop like Amazon, and analyzing it for whether or not the overall text has a positive or negative attitude in it. That's what sentiment analysis is. It's not just that you would want to statically analyze something too. It's like you would want to kind of like maybe you're monitoring like, whether your products are being more favorably or less favorably seen after like an ad campaign. And so you'd be like monitoring your sentiment analysis over time. Obviously, you generally want it to be positive, like good sentiment. And same thing with like political feelings, like attitudes toward the president or a politician. So business, political, like marketing applications, this is like a really, really common like language text analysis technique. Yes. So we're going to learn how to do this at a basic level using Orange without programming, which is really a lot easier. I could probably teach this to 7th grade students. Really, no, seriously, I could. So let's look at how to do this. Okay. This should, by the way, as a prerequisite, this is lab 5. So before you end up in lab 5, you really should go back and look at the prior labs, particularly lab 1 is actually looking at just setting up the Orange software, which obviously I'm not going to redo again here, but you can get it. It's free. You need to install Python that it sits on top of. You don't have to do any programming though. So you need to actually download and install the software, obviously, to be doing anything here. But then also the labs before this, which is the labs on preprocessing, which is lab 2. That one's really important. Labs 3 and 4, stemming and lemmatization lab 3, you don't necessarily need, nor do you necessarily need the encoding lab. Although the encoding lab does cover one thing that we use in here. But the pre-processing data lab for natural language processing is sort of like essential knowledge in order to be able to do the sentiment analysis. Okay. And all of this is available on dataanalyticscurriculum.com. You go to all products, the NLP section is here. And you have the base textbook, which is in the dark gray. And in the base textbook is the sort of chapters on content. So there is an entire chapter on sentiment analysis that has like the sort of like definition-y academic stuff without like the Orange labs. That's available. The data that I'm using is a free download on the site. The data for the AI Rookies NLP with Orange Lab, that's the book we're using now. And then the PDF of the book is available, as is also the slides if you are teaching this like I am. Yes. Okay, cool. So we are going to learn how to do rule-based sentiment analysis in Orange. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is load the data. I, of course, just made up sort of simple basic data sets because when you're learning the techniques, the purpose is to learn the technique and not get complicated with crazy complicated data. But once you learn the technique, you can go and use whatever data you like. You can get data from Kaggle, or you can sort of get it off the internet legally. Be careful. Don't just like not obey the law when you do that. But so this is just a simple data set. We're going to upload it directly into a corpus. Again, the prior labs like teach you what that is. And then we're going to pre-process it. This is the lab 2 stuff because you don't just analyze your text data. You have to take your text data. You have to break it down into tokens, and you have to actually like get it to a point where you can really work with it in terms of analytics, because you have to And then the encoding is kind of done behind the scenes, so you don't necessarily have to like that's lab, I think it's, yeah, lab 4. So okay, cool. So, but this is the pre-processing step. I'm going to go in Orange in a minute and actually do this. And you're making your data all lowercase. You're splitting it up into tokens, and you're filtering out what's called stop words, which are sort of like the sort of like non-essential meaning words, like the, it, here. Essentially, you're sort of like not noun and verb stuff that's like not adding contextual meaning to your text that you're analyzing. Okay. We're going to look at two particular techniques of rule-based sentiment analysis. The first one we're going to look at is called VADER. It's in that context book, like more details of like what this algorithm is. VADER, my understanding, is probably like the most popular one. And Orange, this is the Orange widget for sentiment analysis. It uses a couple, like there's a couple different options. VADER gives kind of a detailed like score output. So and then we're also going to look at another method, the Liu-Hu method, which is a little bit sort of more simplistic. But let's start with VADER and running VADER in Orange in terms of the sentiment analysis. Okay. And so VADER will detect positive, negative, neutral, and compound scores. So it's actually going to give 4 separate scores. It's generally used for like short informational stuff like consumer reviews and tweets and things like that. It will actually, I don't know how actually it considers like punctuation. So there is a match to like punctuation marks. So you don't necessarily, when you pre-process, want to strip everything out in terms of punctuation for this method. I don't know how much those are actually going to add, like how many punctuation marks do you actually have in something. But VADER will actually sort of uniquely consider those. Okay. And then we're going to look at our output with the data table, and it will show us all of the scores that we get from VADER. And this is not all of it. You actually scroll over there. Yeah, so we're going to look at this in Orange in a minute. This is still on the slide. And then a neat thing that you can do, because you have all of the different scores, like you have a positive score and a negative score, is you can actually use a widget to select rows and then do a word cloud, like specifically of the positive words, to sort of like get a sense of like what are like the good things that people are saying about the bakery or whatnot, what are the bad things, and like that will give you like a basis for analyzing things. A word cloud, again, that's covered in lab 4. A word cloud essentially is a frequency of the tokens. Like literally that's what it is. So a word cloud of the sentiment is going to be a word cloud of the token words, and it will filter like a positive sentiment review, and it will like filter and like show you a word cloud of those words. I'll show you this in Orange. But yeah, so that's kind of cool. Okay. So that's the first method that we're going to look at, VADER. And this is showing what we're going to actually do in a minute, which is actually showing the select rows and filtering. This one filters for negative. And like these are the words that are associated with negative reviews. So apparently service is bad. So that kind of thing might be really, really helpful for management or marketing people to look at. Okay. So that's the VADER method. And let's stop here and go into Orange and do the VADER method. Okay, so I'm in Orange with a fresh new slate. I'm going to go new. And I'm going to just use a corpus. Again, as explained prior, you have to install this text mining under options. It's not going to be like part of your base installation of Orange. And you need this to do all the NLP stuff. So I'm going to add a corpus, which is like the data holding object for like language data. And I'm going to upload the data that's called bakeryreviews.csv. This is available on here. So this is available in the data. That's a free download on the dataanalyticscurriculum.com site. Okay. So this is the data that I'm going to, usually I'll just click reload because I did this prior. Okay. So the data is loaded in there. Now to look at it, you have to use a corpus viewer. So I'm going to do a corpus viewer, and then this is what it looks like. Okay. So this actually has tag sentiments in it, by the way, because this data set can also be used for machine learning base. You can ignore this column for this. So it has 15 reviews. The bread was fresh and delicious, which you would expect to be kind of positive. Not bad, not great. That's probably neutral. Coffee was terrible. Like that would be negative. So we're going to take these sentences, we're going to pre-process them, which means we're going to strip out like the and was and then we're going to match the words to like a dictionary match in terms of like whether the words are positive, negative, or neutral. That's just a big like data reference table that the VADER method, they probably update it every now and then. It's somehow built into Orange. I'm not quite sure how to actually look at it, or the Python underneath. So it is there. Like ultimately there is actually a data set in Orange/Python that actually has this match table. And it's going to like take that and it's going to match each sentence with those words and compute scores for positive, negative, neutral, and a composite score for each review. So that's what the data looks like. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to pre-process. And we're going to pre-process text. This is the lab 2 stuff, so you need to go back and refer to that. And we pre-process it. Okay. I always do that. I like double, quadruple click. And okay. So I only want one of these. Oops. And I'm going to flow my data from the corpus to the pre-process. Okay. And I'm going to click on the pre-process. And this one, make sure it's set up like, you know, I think it has a default setup like the first time you use it, but then when I sort of play with it and muck around, sometimes I get different setups. So we want to have 3 steps in here. We want to have our tokenized. That's what splits our sentence into individual words. We want a lowercase so that we don't have lowercase, uppercase, which are 2 different things in computer world. And we want to filter out our stop words, and I have a stop word list uploaded. This is all covered in the lab 2, so I'm not going to cover it again, but that's what this is doing. Okay, so we're going to run it through pre-processing, and then let's do a corpus view again, just quickly. Okay. And so I corpus view, and we want to make sure this is checked off. And now you can see that the data is, in fact, the stop words are removed. This is what's actually going to be analyzed, the tokens and tags. This is our like ready to map to sentiment analysis data. Okay, so it's already in pre-process. Cool. Okay, so next let's actually pull this into a data table so that we can actually see all of our scores. So under the data menu, I'm selecting a data table, and I'm going to flow my data from the pre-process into the data table. Now, yes, we're doing NLP, and yes, mostly we're working with text analytics, but we're also now have sentiment scores. So the data table, like the regular kind of like numeric data, is going to be in a data table. So let's look at it. So we'll pull this up and look at it. And here we have our reviews. Oh, wait, no, not done yet. Sorry. Oops. Watch me goof. We need to go through sentiment analysis first. Okay. So we need to actually run it through sentiment analysis because the pre-processed text needs to actually get scored. So we run under here and we do sentiment analysis and we get this. So the sentiment analysis widget is under text mining, and I want to change this to the VADER method. Okay. We're going to do this one first, and then we're going to also do the Liu-Hu. Okay. The VADER method is going to give us multiple scores. Now we're ready to send it to a data table. Okay. So the data table, which I could have just kept there instead of putting it back. So the data table's here, and we're flowing it into the data table, and we open this, and we see now that we have a whole bunch of scores. This column here, by the way, came from the data. This is so that I can use it for labeled data too. So these are the scores that we're getting from the VADER method. So the first sentence is you get a positive, and the positive is 0.6. The bread was fresh and delicious. Well, that sounds kind of positive. And so this is going to be like a compound score of 0.7184. I don't know how exactly the compound scores are formed. It's probably some type of like regression model incorporating these. But anyways, so that would be like something that would score positive. And then like something that's negative, the service was rude and slow. That has a higher like negative subscore score kind of thing. Well, these aren't really subscores. I mean, you can use them all individually. So actually it has a high neutral too. Not bad, not great. That one's kind of like all over the place. Because the words bad and great, like, you know, what is that going to map to? Both absolutely love the cupcakes. This one is kind of positive. Um, so you can see how the sort of like statement, best bakery in town, that sounds pretty positive. Um, the scones were dry. I don't really, dry maybe positive, maybe negative, but not like super negative. And so you can see how like you're getting a positive score, a negative score, a neutral score, and an overall compound score for each review. And that's what the VADER method is doing. And yeah, so these are like actually like quantitative information you can use that's derived from the textual reviews. Okay. So that's what the data table looks like. The other thing we want to do is we want to be able to sort of like analyze the positive and negative words and like see which ones like are driving things. So we want to do that by, first of all, let's do a select rows. Okay. And then we flow the data to here. And the select rows will let us do like sentiment is positive, negative, or neutral. Mostly positive and negative are kind of fun to look at. And then we want to have something to actually like look at this. We could look at this again with the data table, but it's actually more fun to look at it with a word cloud, which again just is really just visualizing the frequencies. So the word cloud, we start with uploading our data, then we pre-process it, then we run it through the sentiment analysis score, and then we have our scores that we looked at in our data table. But we're actually gonna, with the select rows, we can do like select sentiment equals negative, and this is just gonna look at the negative ones. And we can send this to the word cloud. And what we're gonna see in the word cloud is essentially like the words that like people wrote in negative reviews. So this takes the negative reviews and like looks at them like in terms of like how negative people saw things, like service is lousy kind of things. So that's just like kind of a neat thing to be able to do. You could also, now I'm kind of cheating a little bit here because I'm using the sort of like hard coded row in here, but you would actually want to take the compound, you'd want to actually take the score and like recode them according to these scores. But I just wanted to show you that like this is kind of neat to be able to take like the sentiment values, which you would have to, these scores here don't directly come from this analysis, which is what I'm trying to explain. You would want to like retake these and you can categorize them, and you can do that fairly easily in Orange. The intro course does a lab that does that, and then like sort of just bin and group these and recategorize them. But when you do that and you have them like that, you can look at a word cloud and look at the ones that are the most positive and highest scoring, least positive and lowest scoring, which is kind of cool. And then you have like a really kind of like quick and easy, fun way to like look at your like output in terms of like what's positive and what's negative. Okay, so that's the VADER method. Again, the VADER method, it maps everything to some big dictionary table, and it will give you scores for positive, negative, neutral, and compound for individual numeric scores. Okay. So the other method is this method called the LH, or I think it's Liu-Hu. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce much of anything. And this method is actually a little bit simpler. It literally just gives like one score for each review, as opposed to the 4 scores that that the other method gave. Okay. And so this will just count positive and negative words and score text accordingly. So if it has like 4 positive and 1 negative words, you're going to get a really positive score. And if it has like 3 negative words and 1 positive word, it's going to get a really negative score. This is simpler, but it's less sensitive and probably not as like detailed as the VADER method, but it will run faster also in terms of processing time. So the LH method is available in Orange we're going to add another sentiment analysis widget. And when you click on this sentiment analysis widget, you just adjust like the method that you're using. It's really simple. And then this one is just going to give us 1 sentiment score for each, indicating positive, negative, or neutral values, but you have to interpret it based on this. So the most negative one, like this one here, this is kind of like the worst review. And then the like most positive one. Okay. So you just get 1 score. Okay. Then what you can also do with this, because there's just one score and it's kind of easy to interpret, you can do a heat map, which will give you like this colored visual of like the worst and like the least scoring sentiments. So that's just like a kind of a cool way to like look at this, because it's both the word cloud method I showed you for this, which was more helpful when there were the multiple scores and you could do the selection. Like just looking at these in the data table, like you kind of want to have some type of like visual to like look at them. Yeah. So this is what the heat map is going to look like. Now, this one, like I played with the colors and stuff. I don't remember exactly how I got that, but you can put your entire like you can annotate it so that your reviews. Now these are really short reviews, so they all fit on the page, and so it's kind of like a neat way to actually look at like your results. Okay, so I'm back in orange, and let's run this Liu. Lee, I can't say it. There's no hope there. So I need a second sentiment analysis widget. Okay. And I need to connect my data. I'm going to connect the pre-processed data because that's what we want. Okay. And I'm going to click on my sentiment analysis widget, and it is actually, I don't know how exactly these get like set in different like settings. The Liu-Hu method is set. Now, also I want to point out that like the different methods, like some of them can be used in different languages. The VADER I think is just English, but keep in mind that like the majority of the world is not English speaking. Well, a lot of it is, but not. There's a whole bunch of other languages. And when we talk about natural language processing, of course, you want to be able to do it in like different languages if you're using a different language, because an English dictionary for matching sentiment isn't going to do any good if you're using another language. Yeah. So this is set to do the Liu-Hu method. At least I think it is. Okay, cool. And then what I want to do with this is let's first look at what this looks like. So I'm going to flow this out into a data table so we can look at the scores. Okay. And we get this. Now these are like, they came with the data because they're hard coded. So this is the Liu-Hu sentiment score. So we have this, and we have some of them are like really kind of like negative. I mean, they're based on like the number of negative words, so not bad and not probably like mapped to negative words. Not worse, that's probably like negative words that are like creating a negative score. I don't know the exact, I mean, you could research like how the score is exactly created, but the Liu-Hu method only gives like this one sentiment score. It's not giving the 4 scores like the VADER method does. So we have these scores. I mean, this is kind of a small data set, so you can just pull it up and look at the data. But another kind of like neat thing to do with this is to do a heat map, which is under visualize. And so the heat map, which is here under the visualize menu, I'm going to flow the data into the heat map. And I think I can flow it from the sentiment analysis. I'm not sure. Maybe not. I don't know. Uh-oh. Oh, here it is. Perfect. Okay, cool. Now some of these have the same exact score, so that's why like you're seeing this like 5 more, 4 more. This is not exactly the same one in the slides, by the way. So yeah. You can play with the colors. Kind of fun to just sort of mess around with colors. Actually it works. The green to red is actually nice because in the no, because green, it's kind of like backwards because the most negative ones come out green, or at least to me it is. I don't know. Let's use yellow to purple. Okay. So you can play with the color schemes. You can group things together. You actually want to ungroup. You don't want to merge. Because merging is actually clustering things. That's why you're seeing like 5 more together. It's like uncluster. And then you get each of the individual 15 reviews out like this. And you can see they are annotated. Now you have to actually, if yours looks like this, like you actually want to go under text and review, and like then it will actually annotate it with the review, which is kind of cool. And then what we have here is like the most negative review is not great, not bad, not the worst place. And the most positive is the bread is fresh and delicious, and the score, like the scores are there. So heat map is kind of like a neat way to look at it. This one, like if you don't, I do actually have row clustering selected, but not grouping and merging. Okay. So this will show you like a nice visual of like the positive and negative reviews. Um, you can't do this with like 50,000 reviews and get like a nice heat map out of it, but certainly like up to like 30 or 40, this works kind of nicely. Okay. So that's kind of like a nice like thing to do. And it shows now with the Liu-Hu method, you only get one score. So the heat map is actually kind of like a nice way to do it. You could use this with VADER, but you'd have to like look at like one, like just look at the positives or negatives. Sort of like what we did with the word cloud. Okay. So that is the basis of rule-based sentiment analysis. How to run it, upload the corpus, pre-process the text, select the sentiment method, and then like look at the data like in the scores in the data table. And then I gave you like some certain like ways to like look at your output beyond just like looking at the data table, either like with a word cloud or with a heat map, so that there's some like visual like screening, which is you kind of need that to like, analyze data. And so last but not least, let's sum things up. We looked at two rule-based sentiment methods. The VADER method is more complicated. It takes more into account. It gives more scores. It will actually consider punctuation, although I'm not quite sure how. And the Liu-Hu method is very simple. It's literally just counting up positive and negative words from the tokens. It will run a lot faster, which is a consideration, even if you have a super powerful computer, because when you're using language processing, you have usually pretty complicated, like big data. And so rule-based methods are great for like working for really simple, straightforward sentiment detection. Again, I mean, this is a great, like it's used a lot in marketing. I'm trying to get my business department to like sort of think about offering more analytical courses such as NLP specifically for like marketing students. It's something that these days, 5, 6 years ago, I thought this was obscure and like only should be taught to grad students. Honestly, now I think this should be taught in high school. So this is a brief overview of what sentiment analysis is and how to run an orange. Again, all of the material, should you want to be my patron and study more, dataanalystcurriculum.com. I'm also a professor at one college full-time, another part-time, and you can come and join my program if you want. So we have here the books. The data is available free. The books are available for nominal charge. And the videos are all on YouTube for you to help learn natural language processing. The orange stuff is much simpler. I do have R books too. Those are like slightly more advanced. Those I wouldn't recommend those for like high school entry-level students. Those are more for like the more computer science data majors. Yeah, but thank you for watching, and there will be the next video coming up is going to be video 6, and that's going to be doing the rule-based sentiment analysis, which is a little bit more complicated than, I mean, not the rule-based, sorry, the machine language based. We just did the rule-based. So that's the second method of doing sentiment analysis. Okay, thanks.